Welcome, everyone. This is National Kitchen and Bath Association, and you're here for our very first webinar of the month. All of our sessions this month are based around business management. Today's session is called How Do You Compare Performance Metrics of the High Performers? And this is being presented by Victoria Downing, who's the president of Remodelers Advantage. She's based in the Baltimore area, and I am going to introduce her now. So come on board, Victoria, and thank you.
Hi, how are you?
Good. And yourself?
Very good. It's summer. What's not to like?
Exactly.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here talking to all the folks, all the NKBA members. Great.
Oh, you're very welcome.
So shall I just dive in now, Deborah?
You may.
All right. So hey, folks, I want this to be very interactive. So hopefully you're all seeing the chat box down there, and I'll be monitoring that as I'm talking. So I really want to get your feedback as we're going through this and answer the things that you really want to talk about. So I really wanted to present this. Deborah asked me what program I might like to do, and this is one that I've done actually at KBIS a couple of times. And it's called How Do You Compare Performance Metrics of the High Performers? Now, let me just get my little, oops. All right, so it's going to be for about an hour. Use the chat box for Q&As, and if you stay to the end, we have a special bonus with an extra bonus just for you NKBA members. So stick around to the end, and I promise I'll try to make it lively and interesting. So here's the deal, right? We're all managing small businesses. I am just like you. I am just like you. I own a small business. I've got 10 employees. Things are happening all over the place. Pieces are moving. You got to keep your eye on so many different things. And as complicated as I think that my business is, yours is 10 times more complicated because of all of the intense product knowledge you have to have, and installation knowledge you have to have. That's in addition to the customer service, the human resources, the financial management, the marketing, and so on and so forth, right? So does this picture sort of give you a feel for, yes, that's what my company's like internally? Well, it certainly does mine. So we know it, but so what I want to do today is to share with you some of the metrics that we are seeing from some of the higher performing remodeling companies based across the US and in Canada. Now, we want to show you these metrics from top performers because we don't believe in measuring yourself against the average, right? Who wants to be average? You need to benchmark yourself against the top companies. That's where you want to be. Now, we at Remodelers Advantage believe strongly that your company is simply a tool to get you what you want out of life. Agreed? Give me a little jingle jingle there if you agree with that concept. Drop me a note in that chat box. So we believe that that is what it's all about, right? We want you to have a business that delivers, but first you really need to know what you need out of life, right? What you need out of life. So one of the things I'm gonna divert here and go down a rabbit hole for just a second. One of my big bugaboos is that when people join our roundtables program, we work with them very in depth on their business plans. And we know that we can help you build a business that delivers on your goals. But the problem is that many times these folks don't have goals because they have not done a personal financial plan. I'm a very conservative business person, and I want to make sure that I am secure throughout my life, right? So one of the first things I want you to do is to, if you haven't already, then commit to getting a personal financial plan organized. We can help you, and there's a lot of resources that can help you get your business to the point where it can deliver on those goals, but you got to know where you're shooting before you can get started. So if you haven't done it yet, go get yourself a personal financial plan. If you ever want some input on that, then give me an email and I will, oops, I'm going the wrong way. And I'll be happy to help. I've got a very touchy mouse here, so sorry about the jumping around. So we want you to benchmark yourself against the best. And because I've been so involved in the business since 1990 in this industry, I've had the opportunity to work with hundreds of remodeling companies, really get inside their companies and understand what they're doing right and what's really making the difference from one company that's fantastic to another that's just mediocre. What are those best practices and what are the benchmarks you should look for? So where I'm getting a lot of these numbers is directly from our roundtable members. Now, Remodelers Advantage Roundtables is the industry's largest peer group program. We have over 200 companies that are involved in as members. You have to be $1 million, and our people range from $1 million to about 25 million, with the average being in about in the 4.5 range, something like that. So we take these companies and they meet in groups of non-competing business owners twice a year for physical on-site meetings. So before each meeting, we ask them to provide us with a variety of performance metrics, starting with financials, right? You got to know your numbers. You got to understand your numbers. And I believe that the numbers of your business, when organized, simple, and clear, tell the company's story and can really almost tell you what your next moves should be to improve performance even more, right? But your numbers have to make sense. They have to be clean. They have to be organized properly so they can tell the right story. Now, in this case, because they're members of roundtables, the numbers, the reports, the financial reports have to not only tell the story to the owner, but to the peers in his peer group as well, right? Because we're all there to help one another. So twice a year, we get to see balance sheet, profit and loss statements, budgets, job cost reports, productivity per employee, productivity per field employee, and a variety of other metrics that give us the company story. So that's where I'm getting the numbers that I'm going to share with you today. And as I go through this, if you've got any questions or you want to comment, then let me know. So if I were to say to you, this is the interactive part now, people. If I was to say to you, what is it that makes a company successful? If you were to picture somebody in your mind that's a small business owner, or it can be a remodeler, it can be somebody else. If you're to picture that person in your mind, what is it that tells you that that person is successful? In other words, what are the key ingredients to being truly, quote unquote, successful? This is where you contribute. All right, good talent, employees, great. I know you're out there. What else? A good team, all right, that's great. Yes, a good team. Organization, Cassie, I'd love for you to expand on that a little bit. What else? What makes this business efficient and organized in their processes? Okay, great. Communication and coordination. Okay, what else? What's really some measurable things? They have a good balance between life and work. Awesome. The flow of projects through all phases. Okay, great. What else is measurable? The profitability of a job. Leadership has vision. Okay, what else? What are some other measurable things? Clear leadership goals, excellent communication, knowledgeable employees, profitable sales. Okay, a lot of those things in the balanced life. The size of the company. Okay, well, Kelly, that's a good one. I just want to share with you for a minute. And then I got another one from Cassie with sales totals. Well, there used to be a gentleman in our business. He was a CPA, and he had this saying that was, volume kills, profit thrills. So we at Remodelers Advantage tend to focus on profitability. Profitability is a percentage of revenue, and we also look at owner's comp. So I'll get into that in a little bit more for you in a minute. We covered a lot of good stuff. Another one, those companies are engaged in community events. That's another good ingredient of success. So let me tell you about some of the top ones that I want to focus on today. This is the scorecard we're going to talk about today. Net profits, job cost management, owner's compensation, a balanced life, and predictability. Okay, those are the things that I'm going to focus on today. And then a lot of the other ones are fitting right in here. All right, and I'm going to do this by telling you some stories. And these are real stories of real people. So this is the story about John. Excuse me. So John is a very optimistic person. He's a smiley guy. He's friendly. He's warm. Always gives you hugs when he sees you. He's great. Always thinks optimistically. So John wanted to grow his business, and he knew that for many companies, one of the ways to do it is to add a salesperson, right? So he wanted to grow. He said, I'm going to do it by adding a salesperson. You get another salesperson out there in the street, and you can keep. Let me back up for a second. We'll go a little off the side here. If you're the only person selling in your company, you have to be very particular about the leads you take, right? You can't take everyone most of the time because you just don't have the time, and you have to focus on those leads that are most likely to buy. However, if you have salespeople, then that expands the number of leads you can follow up on. And if you get a good salesperson, it can oftentimes expand the business that you get and the sales that you close, because they can close more than oftentimes an owner who's not a trained salesperson might be able to do. I would love to know from some of you if you have salespeople, and if you do, how many you have. So if you could pop that into that chat box, that'd be great too. So there's one woman, Iris Harrell, she's out in the San Francisco Bay Area, and she's now retired. But she said that, if you qualify too hard and you don't go on a sales call, then you're definitely not going to get the sale. But if you go on the sales call, the chances are you might get the sale. So, if you can get out there, have more appointments, more meetings with clients, the more sales you're going to have. So John said, I'm going to add a salesperson. So he said, I'm going to hire somebody, and he found a perfect woman. She was awesome. She was from the industry. She'd been in the business for a long time. She seemed just perfect. So he hired this person. Right about that same time, just barely got her started, and he had a personal emergency requiring him to fly across the country to the opposite coast for a family emergency that was dire. He was out of the office and out of town and pretty much out of touch for 4 weeks. Now, he was checking in regularly, of course, and I'm looking at chats at the same time, so every once in a while I'm going to pause here, but he was checking in every once in a while. Things were going good. She was signing contracts. Woohoo, right? It's awesome. Moving in the right direction. So she was selling away. He was comfortable. He's like happy. Okay, things are great. Finally, he gets around to coming back. She'd signed a bunch of contracts. Well, when he got back, he looked at those sales, and yeah, she'd been selling, but she'd significantly underestimated the jobs, meaning that now he had to produce these jobs that she had signed contracts for, knowing that his gross profit margin was going to be way smaller than normal. And in addition, they were larger projects that now he had is going to be weeks, if not months, to finish these projects, all knowing that they were eating up his productivity, the manpower he had, and it was not going to produce the gross profit he needed. So that was a huge bummer. So he got back to that news. Then right about that same time, one of his other clients had a flood in the building that he was going to be remodeling shortly. So they had a big flood, insurance had to come in, yada, yada, yada. That whole thing got delayed, leading to a big crisis in cash flow. So the money wasn't flowing in from the jobs he had because they were underbid, and they weren't flowing in from new jobs because this was the one big job he had to do. It was on the charts, and he couldn't do it. So at that point, he had one job that was on his docket, and it was a $270,000 job. So he put together a sales price and sold it for a 33% gross profit margin. Now, he'd organized it so that he could collect as much money as he possibly could up front for special orders, but a lot of it was just because, he staged his payment schedule in that manner. So he was going to earn about $90,000 in gross profit. So then he had this job, he collected as much money as he could up front before they even started. So again, before he started, he stopped for a minute, looked around, and realized that he had spent almost all of the money he'd collected, and he hadn't even started this job. Now, what do you think he did with the money he collected up front? Give me a little chat box there if you can do it to all attendees in that drop box. where it says 2, you can drop down to all attendees. What do you think he did with that, the money he collected for this job? Materials that were too expensive, paid old invoices or other vendors. Yeah, that's it. He spent it on the other jobs, right? He had to spend it on the old jobs because he didn't have the money there that he'd hoped. So he started to steal from Peter to pay Paul. I'm sure you've all heard that before. So he's sitting there saying, I have spent almost my entire gross profit from this job already, and I haven't started. I haven't put a nail in the project yet. So that, my friends, was his Milton moment. For those of you who are familiar, give me a little jingle and tell me what movie this was from. Y'all recognize Milton? Office Space, that's right. Office Space is the movie. So it was a funny movie, and if for those of you who don't know it, Milton was this dweebish guy in the office that everybody picked on. They picked and picked and picked until finally one event happened to break the camel's back. Anybody remember what happened to give Milton his moment? Yep, they took his stapler, right? So here he is. Excuse me, I believe you have my stapler. That was what broke Milton's back. So this, in John's case, realizing that he'd spent all the gross profit on a project that he was now stuck producing for the next 3 months with no additional money, gross profit coming in, that was his Milton moment. So let's look at that for a moment. Yeah, and his desk was moved to the basement. That's right. All right, so strong net profits. Let's look at this for a moment. Net profits is the money remaining after job costs, overhead, and all that has been paid, right? So it's any money remaining. Net profit is the scorecard for small businesses. And some people say to me, I'm not all that money motivated. I don't care about the money so much. I don't care. It is the scorecard for small business. If you're not making a net profit in your business, you're doing something wrong, right? This is one of the ways we look at success in a business. So low, and I added a line here. It says low net profits equals fewer choices. And the reason I put that is because it's true. If you don't have enough money coming in year after year, month after month to build up that net profit, that means you are very limited. And if you have really low net profit, it's limiting in even more ways. So first of all, what are some of the reasons you want to have net profit? What do you spend net profit on? What are some of the things you want your net profit to cover? Or what do you want to do with it? What should you do with it? What would you like to do with it? Come on, people. There's 82 of you on this call. Let's go. New displays. Okay, you could spend it on new displays. You could spend it on more marketing. You could have it for unexpected expenses. So Cassie, keep a pin in that one because that's true. You can put some of it back in the business. That's right. You can invest in more people, bonuses exactly for you as well as your staff, all sorts of things that covers, again, marketing, again, supplies, that sort of thing. Yeah, so you can invest it back in your business. You can give bonuses. You can, have an emergency fund, right? So there's a lot of things that go with having net profit. Yeah, education and training and bonuses. And you know what that means? That's the sort of stuff that top staff members are looking for. They want education. They want training and bonuses. Without net profit, you're not giving them that. You can't give them that. And it's very limiting when they're out there saying, why am I staying with this company versus going over to the other company that's run better? So it's really, it can affect everything. So net profit is the scorecard for small business. Now, in our world, we want to see you making net profit of 8 to 10% of revenue over and above your compensation. And your compensation, without getting too much into accounting, but your compensation includes any salary that you are paid and any draws or dividends that you are bonused or you are given that come off the balance sheet. So I want both of those things to be covered before you do anything like profit sharing with your staff based on net profit. We got to get you can't hear me anymore. Huh. Well, that's odd. Deborah, can you hear me? Okay, somebody can't hear me, but I guess the rest of you can, so that's good. Okay, so back to this. Net profit goal, 8 to 10% of revenue. Now, in our world, what we do is we look at the top 25% of the roundtable members' performance. So the way we determine, so hang with me here for a minute. It's going to sound a little complicated, but to determine who the top 25% are, we add together three numbers. Salary for the owner, any draws or dividends from the owner, and subtract both of those. So those two numbers plus whatever remains of net profit after you subtract the draws and dividends. And it gets a little complicated because that draws and dividends are from the balance sheet, but I want you to subtract that from the net profit. So then after all that's done, then we take that as a percentage of revenue, and we want you to be hitting between 8 to 10%. Now, a number of our members, and one in particular I just talked to recently, is April Bettinger out of Seattle. She's hitting a solid 14% year after year. She's doing a marvelous job. So marvelous that I asked her to be one of our presenters at our Remodelers Summit that we're doing this fall down in Orlando. So we take this top 25% of roundtable members, and right now they are averaging 10% consistently year after year. Now, these figures came from a survey I did about a year ago. So at that point, their average revenue of that top 25% was just over 3 million, which gives them just over 300,000 in net profit year after year. Sweet, eh? That's the kind of numbers you're looking at. That's what you should be looking at. Now, another piece that goes with this is something that Cassie said earlier here, to have enough for like an emergency fund if you need unexpected expenses come up. Some of you have been through that Great Recession back in 2008, 9, 10, as was I. And I saw businesses going out of business left and right. The ones that had a cash reserve are the ones that survived. They got it, they had to use it all up, but they survived and they got through it. So one of the things that we want to do with this net profit is to build up a liquid fund, an emergency fund, a rainy day fund. And because we want you to have between 4 to 6 months of overhead cash stashed somewhere for you to use if necessary. I don't care if it stays in your business. I keep mine in the business. But some people will keep it outside. They'll pull it out and keep it in a personal fund somewhere, but they've got it available, earmarked to be the emergency fund for their business. You need 4 to 6 months of cash set aside. Oh yeah, so like millions of employees lost their jobs during the crash. Some of the comments, and the wood mode crash cost many dealers tens of thousands. That had to have been horrific for those of you who are dealing with wood mode. It was I was shocked. I had no idea they were in that kind of difficulty. But so this is, again, a reason why you need to have this cash on hand, right? So you take the way we did it. Oh, one more time. The way we did it when I was starting in this business was we budgeted in a payment of $25,000 a year as an emergency fund. And we put it right in the overhead portion of our budget, and we paid it to ourselves every year. And only after that emergency fund was funded did we count the net profit. So it didn't come out a net profit. We actually built it right into our overhead budget. So I knew that we were paying ourselves first. We did that for years. And then as we made more money, we upped it and upped it and upped it. So now we have the 6 months of cash sitting there. And we know this is cyclical, right? So if it's cyclical for you, it's cyclical for me. So I have that stashed in case something else ever happens. So one of our members said about cash and this reserve, one of our goals is never to let limited cash be a factor to missing out on an opportunity. Now, I found that to be particularly true because one of the things we were able to do also is after we had enough money for our emergency fund, then our extra cash, we could do things like bonus our staff, or in this case recently, I invested in starting a second business, which is RA Marketing. So we're doing marketing now for remodeling kitchen and bath companies. So that all got kicked off because I happened to have the money and the opportunity presented itself. So very cool. But then the other thing he said was, when the seas get rough, we want to be able to weather the storm. And again, cash in that instance is king. All right, so what did John do? Well, he took hold, right? Now, I am a firm believer that if I get my financial statements and they're accurate and they're clear and I can read that story, if the story's starting to have a bad twist, that myself and my team can hustle it up to get this company back on track. We're not just going to sit here on our laurels. We're going to hustle and get it back on track, whether that means making the tough decision of having to let somebody go or cutting out a favorite project, or whether it means spending more on marketing or whatever it takes. We're going to make it happen. So that's what John did. He got with his staff. They said, we've got to have higher gross profits in order to cover some of the losses we've already taken. So he raised his prices, so he got the larger gross profit. He monitored cash flow. Now, needless to say, the salesperson had been let go, but he monitored his cash flow really carefully. One of our consultants here, our senior consultant, Doug Howard, works with a lot of people on cash flow. He's developed a spreadsheet that you can really track it easily and clearly and see exactly where you're going to be. Now, as he's monitoring cash flow, because as you can imagine, it was super tight, he also started to work with his staff on the importance of job schedules. Why do you think that this is so important? What does job schedule have to do with cash flow? Why is that something that they focused on so closely? Let's see if we can get a couple of responses here. The job has to be finished to get paid. That's right. What else? Okay, time is money, right? Yeah, exactly. You spend more time, you have to be on top of all of that, of the job schedules. Now, referrals is a good one too, but yes, there you go, Kathy, perfect. There are usually certain payment points you have to hit to get the cash, right? So that's the biggest deal right there, is when, in my experience, most contracts are built out to have their payments at certain benchmarks, certain milestones must be met in order to get the next payment. So what John was discovering was, okay, they'd be getting really low on cash. They had payroll coming up on Wednesday, but they knew they had to get a payment in on Monday. If they're going to do payroll, they had to receive money by Monday in order to get payroll ready by Wednesday. So his production manager had to be where he needed to be in order to hit that milestone to pick up the check on Friday, deposit it on Monday, pay it out again to his employees on Wednesday. They had to keep that close of a call, that close of an eye on cash to make sure that all of these elements were hitting together in the right way to make sure that money was coming in. You know, it's not easy to make up the cash flow spreadsheet and monitor it. It's not brain surgery, but it's another element you have to do if you're running into cash flow issues. Yes, okay, so Kathy Osborne also mentioned there can be danger in collecting too much money too early in the project. It can make it challenging to keep dollars related to the job in progress. You can get lazy. Now, as another little aside, and I'm not going to cover it in this webinar at all, but we insist that our members use percentage of completion accounting using a work in progress spreadsheet to make sure that our members are always aware of what money is theirs and what money is not theirs. We only count money that has been earned based on what's been produced up to that point in time. It's a whole nother webinar. I got tons of info on it. If anybody wants to know more about percentage of completion accounting, drop me an email at victoria@remodelersadvantage.com and I'll send you some documents. Then he cut overhead, tough as it may be. And I'll tell you, one of the things that happened during that recession is that people delayed too long in letting people go. I know where it is. Yeah, I'll do the email again. It's not easy to let somebody go, especially after you've worked your butt off to build a good team, and especially now when it's so difficult to find people. I'm just putting my email in here. Oh, you did it already. Thank you, Kit. Thank you, Debbie. Okay, so he cut overhead and he ensured every job was estimated correctly. He and his production manager, everybody, you can get 2 or 3 sets of eyes on it, make sure they didn't miss anything. So they're very cautious. And he secured a loan, which was a short-term loan to help him recover from the cash flow crunch. Whew, so that was a lot to do. I mean, they were hustling and it was a lot of hours and some hard work there. But what happened was He started consistently hitting his gross profit margins. He got through the end of the year, even with all of this bad stuff happening, and he ended up dropping 8% to the bottom line. It was incredible. That's story number one with John. Now let's go to story number two, job cost management. This is a key one for me, because you go through all the work to market for the lead, to get the lead, to go on the appointment, to do the estimate, to bond with the homeowner, all the stuff that you have to do to get the freaking job, and then you go to produce it and you don't produce it well, or your team doesn't produce it well and you lose money. We call that slippage. The difference between estimated costs and actual costs is slippage or grippage. We prefer grippage, where you actually produce the job for less than you estimated, but most of the time it is slippage. And sometimes it's an incredible amount of money. So when we're in a roundtables meeting, we have people report on what their slippage was from the company as a whole, from what they budgeted to what they are actually hitting. Now, I'll get into the gross profit margins that we like to see in a minute, but I would hope that everybody on this call, if I were to say to you, what is the gross profit margin you are targeting for the year, that you would all be able to answer that without hesitation. That's a key number to me. All right, so let's tell you another story. This is Jeff. Now, I bet you some of you will recognize yourself in this story. Jeff owned a company out in California, and he, like many of us, it's cyclical, right? What happens for a lot of us is, especially if you're the only salesperson, you'll sell, and you build up a nice backlog, and you're getting it all, booked out for several months, and then production starts getting busy, and you go, oh my God, I better get over there and help production. So you jump over to production, gosh, Gina lost you again. Debbie, I'm leaving that up to you. I don't know what's happening there, but so then you jump over to production, you produce, and then you lift your head up from all the work you're doing in production and realize you've eaten up all your backlog, and now you got nothing coming up, nothing coming down the pike, right? Does that sound familiar to anyone? So this happened to Jeff. He ran into a slow period. He had one project in design, but he had nothing on the horizon because he had simply taken his eye off the sales ball for a bit. So he needed to get that job into production as fast as he could. Now, again, I'll bet that many of you will recognize yourself here in that, especially if you're the owner, you said, this is an easy job. We've done dozens like this. This is no big deal. We can do this in a heartbeat. So you skip steps. You don't put the detail into it. You don't look at it as closely as you should, and you throw it into production. Have any of you ever done that? Come on, admit it. Give me a yes in that chat box. I bet you have. So he rushed that job into production, and what typically happens when you do that? I mean, we all know that money in this business is made through the planning side of things, right? The more you plan, the more I's you get dotted and T's you get crossed ahead of time, the better the job's going to go. We all know it, but yet we talk ourselves out of following our own systems, and we sometimes fall into this problem, right? And mistakes happen. Okay, so he rushed the job in, and of course he ran into problems, and he felt he needed to eat the cost. What happened was they found out about some foundation problems in this very old house. So he ran into these problems. It was something they should have caught. He could have gone back to the client, but he did not feel comfortable doing that. So they just decided they were going to eat the additional cost. Of course, when they realized it, even though they decided to eat the cost, it caused more delays, more slippage, frustration from the clients. Everything was going south. So it was time to take charge, but that was Jeff's Milton moment. Okay. He had just ran into the wall, hit the skid, last straw to break the camel's back, and he was frustrated. So, job cost management. What we want to see is for you to come in within 2% of the original estimate every job, every time. That is not easy to do, and I understand that. But It's doable. It can be done. Now, I have seen slippage up to 13% as a company overall, and certainly have seen that from individual jobs from time to time. And it might be that you lose some, gain some, and end up with an average over the year of 2%, which is, it's okay, but I'd prefer you to be accurate. Same with grippage. People go, oh, we produced a job for less than we thought. We gained 5% through grippage. Well, is that really what you want? To me, I want accuracy and I want predictability. I don't want to be guessing what I'm going to be making on the job. I want to know that we're doing things the same way every time. We're doing it and we're hitting our goals. So I'd like you to see you doing every job within 2% of the original estimate. Our top 25% of our roundtable members have a slippage of 1.28% on average, which is outstanding. So that's what we want to see. I hate to see people losing money on the production when they've gone to all the work to do the other half. So Jeff said, because we receive regular job cost reports, we knew that we were going to eat it on this job. It's not pretty, but at least we knew. Many remodelers don't know what a job costs until after the job is done. And how true is that? We want, nowadays, depending on the software you might use, you can get job cost reports at that moment, at any one moment. But at the very least, you should be getting job cost reports weekly and reviewing that. And again, ideally having your production team review it. They should know where they stand and they should be responsible for bringing that in. Once in a while, I'll get somebody, one of our members or somebody new coming in will not be hitting that 2% slippage. It'll be much greater. And they're all flustered and taking responsibility when they have a production manager. Like, well, that's the main job of a production manager, is to bring it in on time, on budget, with a delighted client, right? So if that's happening and you're stuck with being responsible for that, look at your staff and see how you can provide more training or more coaching or whatever. All right. Okay, so Jeff, what he did was he pulled together with his staff, and they all got together, and let me just back up one. He ended up the year with only 3% slippage total. But what he did was they took the job that was having the problems, and they all got together and they analyzed it to see where they could save money by subbing out some things that they were going to self-perform, or self-performing things that they were going to sub out. They looked at every angle to see where they could shave off without cutting quality, a few dollars here, a few dollars there, to reduce the slippage as much as possible. Then they did it to every other job, because by this time they had sold more, their pipeline was filled up, and they went back and they revalue engineered every other job in their roster to try to shave off a little bit of money on the costs. And that allowed him to finish the year with only a 3% slippage from what they'd estimated, which was pretty darned amazing. But he did not do it on his own. He pulled his entire staff in, explained the situation, and they worked together. And if that doesn't have some team bonding benefits, I don't know what does. Okay. Somebody said, I really appreciate a post-mortem on a project once it's complete with all the participants to see where things can be done better on future projects. And I like that too. But I don't want you to wait till the end, right? What are you going to do about it at the end? You're going to live with it. You can learn from it, but you can't take action. That's why the companies, the rare companies that I run into that don't do regular job cost reports throughout the project are really missing an opportunity to fix things before it's too late. So, but postmortems, for sure. We started calling job completion something or others, because we used to call them autopsies, and that didn't go over real well. Some people didn't like it. Okay, your percentage. No, I meant if they had, so this is from Kathy. When I'm saying a 2% slippage, I'm saying that over the course of the year, when they do their annual budget, or in the course of a job, if they budgeted, estimated to hit a 33% job cost, and they hit, if they slip, they'd hit 35% job cost. If they, so their job costs would have gone up by 2% or more than they had estimated, which means their gross profit goes down by 2%. Hope that clarified that. So not 2% of 33, but 35% 3%. And okay, great. All right. So now let's talk about Brandon. Brandon Bailey is a great young man, smart, motivated, knows he doesn't know everything, right? He's one of these guys who's always looking for every angle and where he can learn more. So when he came to us, and as a matter of fact, we do a podcast. We do 2 podcasts that you should be listening to. One is called Power Tips Unscripted, and you can look it up at Power Tips Unscripted, or I think it's powertipspodcast.com. And the other one is The Tim Fowler Show. So those 2 podcasts we do them every week. So that just got packed with information, mainly the presenter are our members. So Brandon was one of our first, the Tim Fowler, F-A-L-L-E-R, Tim Fowler Show. Thank you, Debbie. So Brandon was one of the first people to do our podcast with us, Power Tips Unscripted. So you can listen to his story in more detail soon. But let me tell you his story from this angle. So when he came to us, he told me this story that he was, we had some job in the tech sector and he just didn't like it. So he went into remodeling, and it was sort of a fluke. I think he worked with his uncle or something when he was a kid, and he started taking on small jobs, and they grew and grew. But he didn't really have any sense of how to build a business or run a business. So he was running like a hamster at a wheel, right? It was crazy. He was running like crazy. He was busy all the time. He was working a bazillion hours. He was getting clients, but part of the reason was he was so cheap, right? Because he didn't know what he was doing. And he said any success he had was by accident. He said he was getting anxious all the time. He was not sleeping. He was worried all the time about, were the clients going to be satisfied? Was he going to be able to do the job and make it look like they expected it to look? Were his subcontractors cheating him? What was, he just didn't have any controls in place to make this business work. So he was going nuts. So he was making enough money because he was a young single guy. So he was making enough money to basically do what he wanted to do on the weekends, but he really wasn't building himself a career or a business or anything like that. So he was really frustrated and working his butt off. And right about that time, he met a girl, and he fell in love and he proposed. And about that time, when all this was going on, he said to himself, Brandon, either you get this thing working, you man up and you build this into a money-making, salary-making, compensation-making business, or you give it up and you go do something else. Guess what? Guess what that was? Whoop. That was his Milton moment, right? He said, I'm not going to go into a married life and building a family unless I have something to do it with. So he got to work. And he started out by hiring a business coach who helped him develop new sales and marketing materials, which helped him have a better perception when he went into clients. And that helped him start to raise his prices. So he started doing that, and then he joined roundtables, and he was off and running, getting systems and processes put into place. Now, systems and processes are really important. Like a lot of you folks talked about that when you said what made a company successful. Well, they do make a company successful by the more smooth workings of the operation, but it also adds hugely to the value of a company if you were ever to want to sell it. The more systems and processes you have spelled out, easy to use, easy to learn, everybody knows what to expect, everybody does the job the same way, at the same quality level, that can add hugely to the value of your company going forward. So Brandon got started at doing that. Now, let's talk for a minute about owner compensation. We want you, again, to have your salary, which shows up on your profit and loss, distributions or draws, which are on your balance sheet. We want to take those and add them to the salary. And then we want to take the net profits that remain after you subtract, you reduce it by the amount of the distributions. That is your total compensation package. And we want you to look at that before you do anything like profit sharing bonuses. And the reason is you have to earn it before you give it away. So I want you to look at those numbers as a percentage of your total revenue. The stretch goal for our roundtable members is 20% of revenue. For those things added together as a percentage of your total revenue. Now, it's not easy to get. We see a lot of people hitting in the 10, 11, 12% range, but getting up to 20% is hard to do, especially hard to do consistently, but it can be done. And we certainly have members doing it. So our top roundtable members at this time averaged 18%. So if they're, as I said before, their average revenue was about 3.1. So they were taking home they had available to them about $558,000 a year. Now, most of them would put some money back in the business, or they would bonus employees, or they'd take a bonus themselves, or things like that. They didn't take it all home necessarily, but it was theirs to do with as they so chose. And that's the sort of thing we're aiming for. So this is a process. Now, you're all members of NKBA, which is fantastic. Huge amount of educational resources. There's companies out there like ours, which of course I'm particularly biased toward. There's a lot of different ways you can work to continually learn how to improve the results of your company. I don't care what you use, but it is a process. None of this happens overnight. So I'm just going to share with you what happens in our organization as people stay and learn and continue to put these best practices into place. We did a survey of our members to find out where each of them stood at any particular point in time in their tenure with us. So we asked them about their annual owner's compensation. So for those companies, for those owners who had just been with us for 6 months or just around 6 months or more, they were averaging about $94,000 a year in annual compensation. You know, not great. Now, those company owners that had been with us for 2 to 3 years saw a 46% increase, and they were now making an average of $138,000 each year. It's not bad. We're getting more like it, right? And this is just their sort of salary and distribution part. If those had been with us for 3 to 5 years, saw another 25% increase, making around $172,000 at this point. The companies that have been with us for 5 to 8 years are now making over $200,000 with another 17% increase. So you can see how this is all working its way up, right? And again, this is after years, right? A lot of our members don't see a big result. They start working on it, and it's going to be 2 years before they really, everything they've been putting into place kicks into gear and they start seeing significant results. This is just salary in this particular instance. So then those companies that have been with us 9+ years we're making nearly $300,000 a year, and that another 49% increase. Now, our members tend to stay with us on average about, I don't know, 6.5, 7 years, but we have some members that have been with us for 20 years. And one of our groups is called the Mentor 3 group. This group is full of high volume, kick butt business owners who are motivated and fired up all the time. Their average tenure with us is 15 years, and they're our top group. Now, I've got to feel there's some connection between their devotion and dedication to continuous learning and the results that they're seeing year after year. But it is a process, so don't expect it to happen all at once. Now, I'm just going to throw this one little piece in here. I started reading a book recently, and it was called something on the order of The Dynamics of Change. And in there was a graphic that they explained about how people feel about change. And it really struck me because I see it. Dynamics of Change. Yeah, that something like that is the book. I don't know the exact title of it. I don't have it sitting right here. But what they talked about there is something they call the J curve. Okay, so try to imagine with me that you've got a whiteboard in front of you, and there's going to be a short line coming out from the left horizontally, a couple of inches horizontally, and then it drops down and goes through a great big curve and up to the right, and that forms your J. Okay, so you with me on that? So what they said in this book was that a lot of people want to change because they're on that little horizontal bar. And that little horizontal bar represents their current state. And a lot of times that current state is just mediocre or even poor. They've got their steady state. They know where they are. They know they want to change. So they start making changes. They start trying to find new ways to do things and making changes within their company that will allow them to improve their results. So what happens inevitably is as they make these changes, their performance in that area, whatever it is, starts to drop. Now, why do you think that performance would start to drop as they're making changes? I'm going to give you a moment. All right, peeps. Okay, business processes in flux. Excellent. New practices take time to evolve. Exactly. Anybody else out there? Well, that is exactly the case, right? There's a learning curve, right? You got to learn it. Everybody has to learn to do it a different way. So as you're learning, there are struggles, there's mistakes. You do some things wrong. You're on a slower learning curve, so you're dropping down. Performance is dropping, and people need to embrace it. But that's just the problem. They don't embrace it, and as they're dropping, they're starting to freak out. Oh my God, it's not working. We're losing money. It's not working. What should we do? Panic ensues. And what do they do then? All right, I'm going to give you a minute. Yeah, they stop. They go back to the old way. Thank you, Tara. They go back to the old way. Why do they go back to the old way? It wasn't where they wanted to be. Why do they revert, Lynn? It's safe. It's safe. It's too hard to make change. It's comfortable, right? It's easier. They're going back to the comfort. Exactly. You guys get it. But so know that that's going to happen. Awareness is half of the battle here, right? Know that that's going to happen. And when you start feeling that, fight through it. Talk to people. Reach out. Talk to some peers. Reach out to somebody like me and just chat it through. Don't let yourself freak out and go back to mediocrity where you're going to be stuck. Instead, get through that curve and you're going to be shooting through the roof like a hockey stick. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. Okay, like a hockey stick. Thank you, bless you. I appreciate that. And you're going to see your results going through the roof. But you got to get through that curve, that valley, they call it. Okay, so know that's going to happen. So the difference in annual compensation for someone joining us today versus someone been a member for 9+ years is $204,000, 215% more that year. So Brandon, back to Brandon. He had to raise his GP by at least 10% to deliver the client experience that he wanted to deliver. He didn't want anybody bad-mouthing him for not giving them what they expected. So now he marks up his jobs 50%, aiming for a 33% GP. He started hiring staff to support his efforts, so he wasn't the only one doing everything and working until 9 o'clock every night. He started making enough money that his wife was able to quit her job and stay home with their now growing family. And his owner's compensation increased dramatically because he started doing things, he started following best practices, and he saw dramatic improvement. He says, I look back now and I laugh to think I was only charging that low amount for our jobs. And I think that in a few more years, I'm going to look back to now and think exactly the same thing. And in fact, he's now charging 67% markup to get a 40% margin. So right now, so here's his story a little bit more clearly. In 2009, he was making 40 grand. He started changing his tune and he started putting some things into place. In 2013, he made 80. In 2018, he made 125 base. He now has 100% of his health insurance paid. He paid for a car, so he had a brand new car. He took another $60,000 in distributions, and he built up a $200,000 reserve emergency fund. Such a fantastic story. You should talk to him now. He's a changed person. He and his business partner just built a new office in Louisville. It's adorable. I was just there. Very attractive, classy place that they were able to do because they had figured it out. Yeah, it was awesome. All right, here's Mike. This is our last story. Oh, shoot. We've only got 6 more minutes. Do you mind if we go maybe 2 minutes over? Or Debbie, is that a cutoff for sure? That's fine. Okay, great. Okay, so this is a story of Mike. It's Mike and Michael. Mike's the dad, Michael's the son. And they were in charge of the business. They were working together. And the problem they had was that they had never really learned how to delegate. So they had to make all the decisions. Nobody was making any decisions. They all had to come through Mike or Michael. So the problem with that is they're family, and they have kind of a big family, and they do annual family reunions and things like that. They could never both go because somebody always had to be there to answer the questions. One of them had to be able to make the decisions because they didn't have a staff that could do it at that time. So one time they said, you know what? Yeah, micromanagement for sure. So what happened was they finally said, forget this. We're going to go on vacation together. And they had the opportunity to go with a bunch of their old friends to down to Myrtle Beach to go golfing. So they're like, we're going, forget this. They can handle it. We're leaving. So they take off together. They go down that Friday night. They have the big steak dinner. They're hanging out with their bourbon and their cigars after around the fire. They're having a ball. The next day is Saturday, the beautiful day. The golf course is lovely, as you can see, and they're excited. So they all go out, they get to the tee, and they start teeing off and playing around a golf. They're having a ball. It's a beautiful day. And they get to about the third tee when the phone starts ringing. And it rings and it rings and it rings, and they're answering the phone and answering questions and dealing with problems, and the problems just keep cropping up. Tile was put in wrong. The inspector didn't pass something that needed to pass. Yeah, materials were ordered incorrectly. Something broke on the job. It just was crazy. So finally they gave it all up, and they went back to their car, and they sat in their car with the files that they had brought with them, and they worked the rest of the afternoon and gave up on the golf game. That, to them, right there, was their Milton moment. They'd had enough. So let's talk about that for a minute. Balanced life. That was one of the things you talked about earlier, and what causes success, what gives success. We believe that you need a balanced life. And again, people say, I love what I do. I love to work. I don't care. It's not good for you to work all the time. You're not going to be the creative, visionary, enthusiastic, optimistic leader you need to be if you're always working. You need to raise your head out of that and get fresh ideas and a new perspective and let your brain rest. So we feel very strongly that you need to have a balance. And that doesn't mean you don't have to work hard, and it can average out over the year, but we're looking at 55 hours a week or less with at least 4 weeks of vacation, right? That's what we want for you. So what Mike and Michael did is they got back and they said, that's the last time we're doing that. They started writing job descriptions for all their employees. They didn't even have job descriptions. They began delegating and they stopped micromanaging. Now, delegation is actually, that's one of the programs I'm going to do at KBIS in January, is on delegating, how to do it without fear, how to minimize risk, all of that sort of thing. So they stopped micromanaging. They started training their employees. They stopped throwing stuff at the production department, the unfinished. So they started crossing their T's and dotting their I's and getting their production packets completed. And they created checklists and procedures, and it all started to work. Whoops. So what happened with them is, last I talked to them, they'd both gone on a week family vacation, left the business. Projects were being sold while they were gone. They were being produced while they were gone. The thing was rocking it. And now they're able to take vacations together and live a much more balanced life, not to mention taking away the chaos and the anxiety that micromanaging causes to all of us who cling to that control. So another good story. So some stories about some of the things that we look at and how they were put into effect for some of our members. So where are you going to be next year? What are you going to change? What are you going to work on to get your results to improve? That's the big question for you. So hopefully you will be reaching out, staying very involved in NKBA and using all the resources they bring to you, and perhaps joining us as well. Now, I've got a special offer for you. There's a free gift. This is called our Business Tools Suite, and it's a download that you'll get that has all these different calculators in it, plus a definitive guide to hiring, an onboarding checklist, a blog idea calculator. Obviously, we are very big on content marketing, lots of stuff, and it's free to you. Just use that URL, http://tiny.cc/NKBA, and you can download it immediately and have all those calculators and tools at your disposal. And now the super special NKBA bonus, and that is that we're providing you with special pricing just for NKBA members. Every year we do a summit, and this year it's going to be in Orlando with the focus being evolution, the art of growth. So many people go out of business because they're growing too fast or growing in an unsafe manner. And we want you to grow as best you can with high profits, maybe revenue, with team building, so on and so forth. It's an awesome program. Check it out at remodelersummit.com. And we are rolling back the price for you with the use of the special code NKBA 100 that you can use when registering. We're expecting over 700 people to be there. We've got some awesome presentations, so we'd love for you to join us there. Whew, and made it right under the wire. So thank you, Debbie, for having me here.
Thank you so much, Victoria. It was awesome.
Good. I'd love to get some feedback. What'd you think, folks? Was there some nuggets in there for you? Oh, and Debbie, I'm not sure how to share my screen back to you.
It's fine the way it is. Thank you. I want to just thank you all for attending, and thank you again, Victoria, for this great information and for offering our members some wonderful discounts. I really love that. Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. I look forward to seeing everybody down at KBIZ in January.
Sounds great. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.